Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the AA310 students who were able to follow me and not get lost. We'll do a lot more path planning for those that did. Actually, just moving on, it is actually my pleasure to introduce Andres Martinez from basically NASA headquarters, although he does live and work out of NASA Ames in California. So when I say I'll go visit you, I did not get to go to NASA headquarters. But Ames is actually more fun. So I met Andres about 13 years ago in 2010, 14 years ago now. I lost track of time. In 2010, as I was transferring everything that I did at MIT with the Spheres project over for NASA to operate the facility. And over that time, we did some amazing things. It was more than 4 years working together in the International Space Station. I got to know Andres. We got to do trips in Mexico, helping people in Mexico. As many of you might know, this is Hispanic Heritage Month. And we were lucky enough to bring him in just at the very, very end. Like we have 6 more hours of Hispanic Heritage Month to go. No?
15 more days.
Oh, it's like 15 to 15. See, there you go. I got something wrong. That's okay. That's why I have friends like Andres. We spent a lot of years working with things about space station. Then people at NASA realized he was good, so they stole him from me. I had another great program manager, Jose Benavides, also from Mexico, totally by coincidence. And then Andres moved on. He was in charge of CubeSats. Then he came back, and he really wanted to take my job because he managed the project Astrobi, which ultimately replaced Spheres aboard the space station. It's actually still there. And I have to tell you, it actually was an honor to know that NASA was taking what I had done more than almost 20 years back and said, let's do version 2. And it actually was a friend of mine who was in charge of version 2, which was amazing. And then Spheres finished, I moved on, I came here, and Andres moved on a lot. And I actually want him to tell you about what he's doing now, but he's also going to tell you about what he did before, which is an amazing story. And I don't want to say really anything else about it because you have to hear the story from him. And I'm not kidding. Please remember, this is the real life story of the real person. It's not a movie. Because some of his story is movie-like. And I hope that it inspires you to know that, nope, it is not a movie. It's right here. Andres, thank you for coming.
Oh,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you. Thank you so much. All right. Hey, thanks. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you, UW. I learned that it's not UW, it's UW this morning. Thank you, UW. Especially thank you, Christy, for the invitation. Alvar, thank you for reaching out. Consul, thank you for joining here. Really excited. And, I also get a little nervous when my real boss is in the room. My wife is sitting all the way in the back. And so I'm going to share with you what I do now, what I've done in the past at NASA. I'm going to share with you, ever since I joined NASA and I started doing these type of talks, 2 questions would always come up. One was, when did you start dreaming about working at NASA? And the second question was, always, how did you get to NASA? So you guys ready? I'm going to get real personal too. I'm going to share with you guys quite a bit of my background so that you guys can see how Andres went from an immigrant little boy and studied his way all the way to having the best job in the world. Not once, but along the way about 6 or 7 times. All right, first I want to start with a message from my boss.
It's a story of dreamers, doers, pioneers, and adventurers. And at the heart of that story is a crown jewel where humanity's quest for exploration shines very bright. That place is NASA. And we do what is hard to achieve what is great for the benefit of all humanity.
Odysseus is finding
We benefit humanity through our work on the International Space Station, where floating explorers conduct groundbreaking research and science that you've never seen before. We're conducting critical experiments to improve cancer treatment on Earth. That supports President Biden's cancer moonshot.
And liftoff of Artemis 1.
We benefit humanity through the Artemis mission. We will return America to the moon. Then we'll leave our footprints on the red sands of Mars. A moonshot like that requires all people, all the time. And through Artemis, NASA is creating thousands of good-paying jobs in all 50 states. We benefit humanity through exploring the heavens, through knowing the cosmos, through searching for life beyond our planet. Of course, a mission for all of humanity needs the talents of all. And NASA is educating and inspiring the Artemis generation, the very generation that will land on Mars. And soon they will be the ones that will be educating and inspiring us. And all of that work for NASA, all of those benefits for you add up to this. The state of NASA is strong and it's growing ever stronger. Because when we take one step forward, it's a giant leap for all of humanity. And let me tell you that we've got some giant leaps that are in store. Onward and upward.
All right, so every year we create some incredible videos, usually at the start of the year. I always like to start with a video like this because we do some pretty good work. I want to start with sharing with you guys a little bit of history about NASA. So over 100 years ago, we thought the sky was the limit. And so we began as the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics. And it all began in 1915 on the East Coast in Langley. 24 years after, we started the Ames Research Center in Silicon Valley. There you can see some of the historical photos because we thought truly that the sky was the limit. Soon after that, these new centers came about. They started out with different names, but in honor of astronaut John Glenn and Neil Armstrong, the names were changed. Finally, in 1958, NASA began. There's other places where we have centers or facilities across our beautiful nation. I am an employee of NASA headquarters. Here's a photo of the building. It's actually here in DC. But when I was asked to join this incredible team, and I was asked how soon I could move to DC, I said I don't want to move. And so I remained with an office at the Ames Research Center in beautiful Silicon Valley. And for over a decade, my entire focus was small satellites. Small satellites to conduct exploration, precursor missions. I was for over 10 years, the program executive for, we used to be the Advanced Exploration Systems. We've gone through a few name changes, and now we're the Mars Campaign Office. This is the smallsat CubeSat fleet of NASA as of September 2023. It's probably grown significantly. But I think this gives you an idea that, for us, CubeSats are not little toys, right, that we use just to do some cute things. We actually use CubeSats for real science. And here you can see the different ways that we use them. We use them for biological and physical sciences. We use them for, to test new and demonstrate new technologies. We use them for heliophysics. We use them for exploration. And you can see in the yellow ellipses the missions that were under my responsibility. This is one of them. Her name is Lunar Ice Cube. And Lunar Ice Cube's mission was to tell us where the water is on the moon. We've already demonstrated that there's lots of water on the moon back in 2009 with the All-Cross mission. Lunar Ice Cube had a spectrometer, very powerful spectrometer, which was actually a miniaturized version of the spectrometer that we used on OSIRIS-REx. The team that worked on OSIRIS-REx worked on this mission, mentoring students at Morehead State University. The actual satellite and the ground station and everything was led, managed by university students, just like you. And so when they asked me, Andres, out of all your missions, do you have a favorite? And of course, they're like my kids, right? You can't say yes. But in this case, I say yes. Lunar Ice Cube, because of its mission and because of the fact that it was designed, built, certified, and operated by students. An incredible demonstration of what's possible. This is the first, my first spaceflight mission with NASA. It was an educational project. We called it TechEdSat, Technology Educational Satellite 1. And its mission was simple. Using this tiny little CubeSat, 10 centimeters cube, are we capable of conducting an inter-satellite communication with this little tiny CubeSat and Iridium and Orbcomm, companies that have huge satellites in space, right? Lots of infrastructure in space. Is it possible? And these students, this group of students from San Jose State University, took the challenge of, can you guys design, build, certify, and operate this satellite? And we're going to give you all of 6 months to do so. Are you guys up for the challenge? And so they were assigned the project in November, and by May, it had to be ready because in June, I hadn't carried it to Japan. It was taken up to station from Japan. The Japanese Space Agency helped us get it up there, and then it was deployed from station. So this is the first time that NASA deployed CubeSats from the International Space Station. The reason we only had 6 months is because we realized that we were about to do this with 2 other CubeSats, and we didn't have a NASA sponsor CubeSat. That would have been kind of embarrassing, right? Launching CubeSats from station, and we don't have a NASA sponsor one. So that's why in a hurry we reacted, and this team made it happen. An incredible team. Several of them came and worked at Ames. A couple of them decided to take a higher paid job with industry. One of them is a senior manager at NVIDIA now, and one of them passed away. So my first project, spaceflight project, TechEdSat 1, they're up to TechEdSat 17, I think. So it's been a really successful program. Educational program. This is SporeSat, and this was my first scientific mission. So biologists around the world had already determined, and they had a hypothesis that plants use gravity as a compass. This is why the roots go underground, and this is why the rest of the plant grows, right? But what we didn't know was what gravity levels do the plants need, right? Because we want to grow plants wherever we go, right, for food and also to create an environment that's somewhat similar to what we have in our beautiful planet, right? And so this CubeSat, this time the CubeSat was 10 by 10 by 30, the size of a loaf of bread, right? And so we put it in its payload through centrifuges, right, which were generating different gravity levels, right? And so we germinated spores, and by germinating them at different levels, during germination, there's a calcium ion flux that takes place, and we were able to measure that electrical signal, and that's how we knew that germination was taking place, right? And that's how we were able to measure that, okay, at this gravity level, this happens, right? And so this was my first scientific, when I first took the responsibility for this project, I'm not a biologist, I'm an engineer. And so, but it was an incredible mission because the project had some top-notch students and biologists from different universities, Purdue, Texas A&M, I believe, and also from Ames. From there, I moved on to work for the Space Technology Mission Directorate, where I was the Small Spacecraft Technology Program Manager, and this is one of my projects. So over a decade ago, we demonstrated optical communications using a tiny CubeSat. In this case, it was two of them. They were 1.5 U, which means it's 15 centimeters by 10 by 10. Tiny little CubeSats. And their mission was to orbit. We placed them on LEO. And they were to point. It had some sophisticated ACES. And they were able to point at a ground station the size of an iPad from 720 kilometers and download data at an incredible speed. This was initially, over 10 years ago, this was a game changer because of the amount that we were able to download. Recently, we had another mission called T-Birds, which downloaded like 1,000 times what we downloaded back then. So optical communications is something that we continue to invest, but just the fact that these two tiny little CubeSats, at the speed that we're orbiting Earth, it's an incredible speed. And for it to be able to point with this level of accuracy, just the pointing itself to me was an incredible feat, right? Downloading the data was pretty amazing. And of course, we do some cool videos, and we have a simulation of what this mission was about. So aside from the comm demonstration, another thing that was also important to us was proximity operations, right? To be able to dance without stepping on each other's toes, right? Very important to us because this was 10 years ago. More recently, we're sending lots and lots of small sats at a time. And so, being able to control them so that they don't crash, right, in an autonomous fashion is something that we started testing a long time ago. But I want to talk to you guys about our Moon to Mars program. That's what I did over 10 years ago. But now, NASA, I know that you read or seen on the news recently that we started our return to the moon, and we call our program Artemis. In the 60s, our program was called Apollo, and it just so happens that Apollo's had a twin sister in Greek mythology, and the name is Artemis, right? And for those of you that have looked at history and looked at Apollo, so during the Apollo program, it was just a bunch of guys that went to the moon, right? And this is why we named it Artemis, because we want women to go to the moon too. And we're also making a bold statement that when we go back to the moon, in probably 3-4 years, there will be 2 astronauts, and one of them will be a woman. Could be 2. Right? Right now, the astronauts that are being trained for the Artemis program, there's an equal balance of women and men. But we're going back to the moon, and we're going back because we want to learn how to live on another planet. Mars is the goal. Mars is the real objective. But we're going to use the moon as a test bed to learn how to live on another planet. So this time we're going, and we're actually going to build places to live and stay there for a while. We're going to learn to live in a sustainable fashion. We know there's water, And so we're gonna need to learn how to live there. So this is everything that we're working on right now. So you guys have seen our Space Launch System. We call it SLS. Inside NASA, we call it our moon rocket. During the Apollo program, it had a really cool name, Saturn V, right? I really don't like SLS or Space Launch System. We had to come up with a really cool name. Then we also have Orion, the Orion spacecraft. We've contracted with SpaceX for Starship and also with Blue Origin to get us to the moon, to the surface. We're also redesigning our surface operations. We have a program also to build a gateway, which is a more powerful space station, if you will, that's going to be placed on a near rectilinear orbit, orbiting the moon. And then everything else that you see below, we've also been upgrading and retrofitting, getting ready for Artemis. And we're not doing this alone. These are all the nations that have signed up, that have signed the Artemis Accord. We say we do this for the benefit of humanity, and we really mean it, right? We involve all of our partners. And so everyone that you see here is supporting us. And we had, for everything we do, every space mission, we develop a concept of operations where we detail step by step what's going to happen, right? And based on that, we start designing our system. This was Artemis 1, and Artemis 1 was a test of everything, right? The rocket integrated with the Orion spacecraft, using the ground system, the launch pad, and everything that makes up the ground support systems. Using the parachutes, the whole thing, right? That was the purpose of Artemis 1, to test everything for the first time. It wasn't crewed. There was no one in there. We did have a moonikin. We don't call them mannequins. We call them moonikin, right? And so the moonikin, in this case, needed a name. And so we ran a contest. What should we name the moonikin, right? And it came down to 3 names, and we ended up choosing Arturo Campos. Because Arturo Campos is a Mexican-American NASA engineer who, you guys seen Apollo 13? Do you know what happened in Apollo 13? Well, Arturo Campos played a critical role in bringing the astronauts home. And so in recognizing his contributions, the moonikin was named after him. So Arturo's moonikin went to the moon. On this first launch of SLS and Artemis 1, we had many secondary payloads, right? The primary payload is Orion, and then we also had many secondary payloads. 10 of these were CubeSats, small sats. 7 of these were sponsored by NASA, and 3 sponsored by our partners, 2 Japanese and 1 Italian. 4 of the 7 NASA-sponsored CubeSats were under my responsibility, and you can see them highlighted in blue bold letters. And this is once we deliver them to SLS. This is where they place them, and you can see where those that we sponsor ended up being placed. They were placed in their dispenser, and from there, at a given time, they were just the little door opens, and then they get deployed. But I included other things too, because you can see this little box. I also wanted to identify the other CubeSats that were using our radio. So we also sponsor the development of a deep space radio. We call it IRIS. So these other missions were also using my radio, which wanted to make sure that my office received recognition for that. And so this is the portfolio that I managed for over a decade. These four CubeSat missions, and also a 21-meter ground station at Morehead State University, which is now part of the Deep Space Network. And I'll just give you a high-level overview of each one. So LunIR, you can see the microcryo cooler had a little refrigerator inside this tiny little box, because the instrument requires to operate at a very high temperature, and so to control the overall temperature, it requires a little refrigerator, and that's the size of it. So LunIR, or lunar infrared. I did a flyby of the moon, taking high-resolution images, and also it had a spectrometer, and it was also taking readings of the surface. This is lunar ice cube, and it went and it looked for water and documented water in different forms. And NEA Scout, or Near Earth Asteroid Scout, went and met a near Earth asteroid. And what was unique about this mission is that it used a solar sail, a pretty large solar sail. And then BioSentinel. So BioSentinel was delivered by Ames Research Center. And this is a fundamental space biology mission. So in its payload, it carried yeast, 18 different experiments of yeast. And you know, when I also assumed responsibility for this, I said, yeast, why yeast? Don't we make beer and bread with yeast? Well, again, I'm not a biologist, and so they helped me understand why. So the whole experiment here was to document, to measure and correlate, you know, when we expose biology to high levels of radiation, right? What happens? How does biology react? And yeast, I was told, its DNA reacts almost 100% the same way our DNA reacts, which is unbelievable. And so this is why we had yeast in our payload. It was dormant, and so we activated the yeast when we knew it was far enough for us to take measurements. And here's another view into what's inside this tiny little box. This box is the size of a box of basketball shoes. That's how tiny these things are. And there you can see what's in it, the microfluidics payload, and the way we were able to detect if the yeast had been properly activated. And then all the different avionics that we used for the satellite. BioSentinel is right now over 40 million kilometers away from us, and we make contact with it every day. So it continues to provide data. And here's a video. You know, this is a very important mission, obviously, because we want to go to Mars, and we know that we're going to expose our crew to pretty high levels of radiation, and so we need to learn the effects of that and also understand what are we going to need, right, so that we can cure them, so that we can help them if that happens. Another mission that was also under my responsibility, this was a collaboration with Space Technology Mission Directorate, and this is Capstone. We placed Capstone almost 2 years ago on this orbit that you see here. We call it near rectilinear orbit because it's almost a straight line. And you know, we chose that orbit for our gateway because it requires minimum station keeping, right? So the moon has a little bit of gravity, and whenever that happens, it tends to pull objects down. And so that will require for us to keep bringing it up. So, well, we've learned that in this orbit, station keeping is minimum, and so this is why we chose this orbit. Capstone was placed almost 2 years ago. It's the first object that we placed on this orbit, and it's been an incredible, successful mission. it has been informing our Gateway program almost for 2 years now. Oh, let me skip this. And so Artemis 1, the launch, I had the, I was actually there. So let me show you.
Four-stage engine start. 3, 2, 1.
So this is what the world saw.
And
this was
liftoff
me.
of Artemis 1. We rise together. Back to the moon and beyond.
Oh my God. I was a little bit excited. Oh my God. Here we go to the moon. Oh, can you hear that? Yeah, it was an incredible launch. We learned so much from this test mission. Here you can see the mission objectives and the things we completed, the things we did for the very first time, and some of the new elements that were tested. It was just very successful. So Artemis 1, it's in the books already. Artemis 2 will be crewed. This is next year. We've already selected the crew. This is the 4 astronauts that will be going to the moon. They're not going to descend and land on the moon. They're going to orbit the moon and come home. This is another test mission. And then Artemis 3 is when we finally return to the moon. And then there's like Artemis 4, 5, 6. We already have a plan for like 12 Artemis missions. So it's really exciting. But that was then. Now, starting last year, my new focus is now Mars. And I'm a member, I'm a domain lead or program executive within the Mars Campaign Office. And we are essentially the technology development organization for the Exploration Mission Directorate. So our responsibility is to work on all the technologies that we're going to need to send humans to Mars. We're going to use the moon. We're going to use the moon to test all the technologies that we develop because that's our test bed. But everything we develop will be adjusted to be used on Mars. About a year and a half ago, we started our Mars architecture team, started producing architecture concept reviews. What would a mission be like? Sending 4 astronauts to the moon. And this is a video, it's kind of long, and so I just took images. So just to give you an idea of what it would be like. So this is day 0, they leave Earth, right? And on day 279, they finally make it to Mars, right? And then they spend almost 80 days on Mars because we have to do some exploration. And then finally, we began our way back on day 345. So these architecture concepts are allowing us to identify any challenges that we know we're going to be encountering, right? So here we've determined that on day 438, there's the possibility of a conjunction with the sun, solar conjunction. And so this is telling us that for almost 2 weeks, there's no direct communication with Earth. And so this is something we have to figure out how to deal with because no communications with Earth is not acceptable. Finally, on day 850, everybody comes home. So, you know, going a mission to Mars, we've never done anything like that. Nothing prepares us for something like this. When you think of the combination of the long duration, the small crew, right now we're thinking 4, right? And so they're still analyzing that. The delayed communication, so there's potentially up to 20 minutes each way of delayed communication. Houston, I have a problem, gets there 20 minutes after I place the call. And then Houston receives the message, they try to figure out how to respond, and then they respond, and that's almost an hour. So delayed communications. And then limited abort. So the current analysis indicate that after 4 to 6 weeks, making a U-turn and making an attempt to come home is going to take much longer than if they just keep going. Okay, so very limited abort. We have on my team folks that have studied close analogs, but nothing comes close, right? But they're in touch with the Navy, and they're in close communications with the folks that go down on submarines for months, right? Just to understand how do they do it? Who do they take with them, right? How do they deal with anomalies, with problems that come about? So we're in communications with them. But then air travel is another area that we also started looking into. In Artemis campaign, obviously, they're available to us. But we're looking all the way back to when we went to the South Pole, and what was that like, right? Well, it turns out that in this specific mission, people died. So, we're studying these close analogs to see what happened, to see how they responded, to see how they got through or not. All the way back to 1492. With La Niña, the Pinta, the Santa Maria, how did they do it, right? Because today, solving problems today aboard the ISS pretty much gets handled by the ground. The 6, 7, sometimes 10 astronauts that are aboard ISS, they're there to conduct research. They're there to assist scientists who send their payloads, who need a pair of hands and eyes to do research, right? They don't use this, they don't control the space station to raise it or to lower it or to move it. All of that is done by the ground. The ground, the folks at Houston, are the ones who are keeping an eye on the heartbeat of the station, and they're the ones that are anticipating if something could potentially is potentially about to happen, and they're the ones that make all the corrections. They're the ones that respond to. They're the ones that are pushing the buttons to make sure that nothing bad happens. And when I started looking at some of these metrics, I was like, wow, I had no idea. So here's some of the numbers. Every year, there's about 30 alarms that go off of something that could turn into a really bad day for everyone on station. Out of those 30, 1.7 are real. So almost 2 of those alarms are real. Okay? But these are handled by the folks on the ground. In most cases, the crew aboard station are asked to go into a safing area, right? Where they go and they hide away. Or sometimes if we need them to intervene, to push a button because we can't do it from the ground, then they help us. But everything is pretty much handled by the ground. With this 20-minute delay, we're not going to have that luxury. So we're anticipating that the ground's not going to be there, because when you look at how things are handled, right? So today, even with the 1.5 second delay, we're still able to do the problem solving, the decision support, the oversight, and the commanding from the ground. All of that gets done from the ground. But as the delay increases, you can see that progressively less and less is possible from the ground, right? The crew has to take care of things themselves. So we determined that when it gets up to 10 minutes, it's totally up to the crew to handle a potential bad day. And because of that, a year ago, in the summer of 2023, I was asked to lead an assessment of what do we do about this, right? And we started by calling it Earth-independent operations, because how do we become independent from the Earth, right? For a long-duration mission to Mars, human mission to Mars. We sent rovers, right? But that's like sending a bowling ball on a projectile ballistic shot, right? Because there's no heartbeat in there. So you just send it in, and you maneuver a little bit. But here we're going to have heartbeats. So how do we handle a long-duration human mission to Mars, where there's potentially no evacuation, no abort, no coming back, where there's no resupply, right? We have to take everything that we're gonna need for those 2 years, and where potentially we're gonna have a very small crew. So you guys are seeing this for the first time. My team just created this cool poster. And so these are the priorities that I've been given. Make sure that, that you take care first of anything that has the potential for loss of crew. At NASA, we have a lot of acronyms, a lot of abbreviations. In this case, we call it LOC-LOM, loss of crew, loss of mission, right? So make sure the crew is healthy, is safe. Make sure the mission objectives are still in place. And then third in priority is, whatever you can do to help better operations, we'll take it. But first, we have to take care of the crew. So when I was first assigned to this, I said, wow, this feels like an assignment to develop something like this, right? But a friendly one, a friendly hell. So that's my new assignment. And so we have to really look at and keep an eye on the heartbeat of the vehicle, the spaceship. And in this case, that means collecting lots and lots of data, right? Because in this case, data is the queen of this story. We have to look at the data and see what it's telling us. So, and we're gonna be keeping the heartbeat of the vehicle, the spaceship, every single subsystem, power, propulsion, ECLIS. ECLIS is the Environmental Control Life Support System. Everything, including the crew. We need to keep the real heartbeat of the crew, right? And so bringing all that data together, we have to run diagnostics, prognostics, and anticipate that something wrong could be happening soon if we don't act. And so we're responsible for providing all the technologies, all the tools, everything the crew will need to have a safe and successful mission to Mars. We started already organizing the different capabilities that we're gonna need. Again, the vehicle system, we have to keep an eye on everything. And so this will involve new technology development in the areas of sensors, high performance spaceflight computers. So we already have activities on that. Mission management, this is what NASA has been doing now for decades, right? And then crew interaction, so providing the crew with all the tools they're gonna need. And then really, and we color it red, anomaly response, because that's really what includes areas that are TBD. We have no idea how to do. Okay, that's really where a lot of the research and development is gonna take place. And then data integration, because data, we need to manage and use all the data available, not just what's being collected from telemetry from the spaceship, but also documentation, manuals, procedures, everything. We're gonna need to have a way to manage that. We're using time to effect as a metric for everything. And what does that mean? That means how much time do we have between something takes place that's really, really bad, right? Do we have seconds? Do we have minutes? Do we have hours? Do we have days? How much time do we have before, if this happens, before something really bad happens? And so that's what we're using as a metric to design everything. And then this year we started by taking a look at 25 plus years of ISS, having crew aboard station, by looking at all those instances, all those alarms that took place that were real, right? Almost two were real. So, and we documented case studies where we documented exactly what took place, who did what, right? To respond to that potential bad day with those two real alarms, right? And then from that, we also documented use cases. So from everything that was done on the ground, how much of that do we need to bring on board, right? Because the ground's not gonna be there. And then we're starting to prototype some user interfaces. What tools are we gonna provide the crew? So today is the last day of our fiscal year. Up until now, we had 5 NASA centers supporting us. Starting tomorrow, we have one more. So 6 NASA centers, 6 of the 10 NASA centers are going to be supporting my new program, and that's pretty exciting. All right, I have 15 minutes to hurry up. So I would always ask, how did you get to NASA, right? And so first I want to start by introducing you to my family. So my wife is an educator. My son recently started working at Stanford University as a software developer. My daughter's also a teacher, an educator. And I became a grandpa 3.5 years ago, and there's Melody. And when I ask her if she wants to be an astronaut, the first thing she says is, "Can I use your rocket ship?" So that's a family. And I was born in Mexico, in southern Mexico, in a small little town called Jojutla. And my dad worked in the U.S., and this is my family. And we took this picture to send to my dad because he was here in the U.S. And we sent on that photo. This was my first picture in my 3rd grade class when we moved to California. And I'm so lucky because now I live in the Bay Area, and look, I was in the Warriors. And so now that I show that off. But this is what my town looked like. It's agricultural, and so remember that it is a beautiful place. So I started working when I was a little boy. I've always worked in my life. In Mexico, I was a street vendor. And then when we moved to the U.S., I spent my first summer in the U.S. Recycling boxes at the garment factory where my mom worked. And they paid us $1 an hour. So I was there 40 hours a week. I spent my summer doing that. And then all of my free time, I spent assisting my dad. My dad was a welder. And he had his own shop. And then more photos of me in my basketball teams. And then I also like to share, I know we have students here, and I know you're doing all the right things because you're here at UW, which is an incredible institution. So you're already focused. But I also like to share that there was a period of time where I lost focus. In high school, I took this job where I started unloading trucks and cleaning the building, and then I moved my way up to the point where I was a sales executive, making a lot of money while I was in high school. And I had this bad attitude, who needs to go to college, right? I'm already making a lot of money. And the company went out of business, right? And I graduated from high school, barely, and the company goes out of business. So I see my friends going off to college, and they would come and visit when I was working at this place. They would tell me all the stories about their engineering classes and field trips they were taking to Rockwell, to McDonnell Douglas in Southern California. And I would just listen to them in awe, like, wow, that sounds really nice. Well, the company goes out of business. I'm still helping my dad. And my dad said, he asked, what are you going to do next? And back then, there was no internet, so I had the newspaper looking for a job. And he said, okay, that's enough. Stop playing with your future. Go back to school. You were always good in math and science. Just go back to school. So, and I said, Dad, I need to earn a living. And he said, just go back to school. You're still living home. You don't have to pay anything. Go back to. So I did. I went back to school. So making lots of money was no longer a priority. I took a job selling shoes at a women's shoe store. And then I met my beautiful wife, and we decided that we were going to get married. So I wanted to pay for as much as I could myself. So I took a second job, and this time as a janitor in the tallest building back then in downtown LA. And then I took also a seasonal job at UPS, at the busiest hub in the world for UPS. This has been my most physical job ever. They would only allow you to work 4 hours because it was that physical. They would give us 2 breaks, a 10-minute lunch break and a 5-minute regular break, right? And so the first thing you wanted to do, being inside that big truck, was to run out and drink water. And there was a really long line at the water faucet, so I would always come back going, oh my God, what am I gonna do? Anyways, most physical, and from there I started working at an elementary school as an assistant teacher. And then we got married, and then I went back to school, and then I went to Cal Poly, and then finally I'm an engineer. And Xerox gave me my first opportunity, and by then we waited as long as we could to have my son. But my son was born during my senior year. And I thought, oh my God, how am I gonna graduate? Well, it turns out that's the quarter that I had the best grades. I had an A just about in every class, except music. I had a D in music, so I went to my D and I said, oh my God, I'm not graduating. And he said, why? Why have a D in music? And he said, that's a passing grade. It's not an engineering class. And I said, really? He says, yeah, you can graduate. So anyway, so Xerox sent this incredible moving truck. And we had so few things that when they showed up, these guys laughed. Because Xerox had sent this incredible large truck, and when they said, where's everything? And it was in that little corner. And those guys laughed. And so I started working at Xerox. This was my first Silicon Valley job. You know, I usually spend lots of time talking about Xerox because for those of you that haven't read about your history books about Xerox, let me just spend 30 seconds on this. That short list is a very abbreviated list of all the things that were invented at Xerox. But everything you see here was invented at Xerox in the 70s. In 1972, Xerox employees were using Windows, they were using a GUI, they were dragging and dropping using a mouse, they were connecting to their network, sending documents to a network printer, sending email, all from an integrated Office suite of applications. It was just incredible. And there's movies about this because Steve Jobs went to visit PARC and he was like, oh my God, this is awesome. So he designed his own system, the Macintosh, almost a decade after he saw, you know, the system at PARC. And of course, Windows came even a decade after that. So this was an incredible place to work. That's my photo of my first ID at Xerox. I had LASIK, so I don't wear those thick glasses anymore. My last project was canceled at Xerox. And we determined that no one was going to cancel us. So we negotiated our way out of Xerox, and we founded our own startup company. There was this guy on my team who is a personal friend of Sergey and Larry. Can you guess who Sergey and Larry are today, right? So back then, Google was a tiny little company, and a member of my team was a good friend of those two guys. So they were our mentors. And when they found out what we were building, they said, when you're your own company, we want to do business with you. Not right now, because you're inside Xerox. And so we developed technology that all of you use today. You just don't know it's there. But sometimes you're surprised because you get a pop-up, right? If are you interested in this? We developed a personal relevance engine, and Google was super excited about this. But we were so far ahead of our time because privacy issues. Nobody wanted to sign up for with an account with us, which was required. Anyway, long story short, we received funding from the venture capitalists. We started this company. I was a VP of engineering. We were in business for about 2 years, and then we saw the writing on the wall. Funding was not going to materialize, and we sold the company to Google. This is my second best job in the world. I'm still working. I'm not rich, but this was an incredible ride, and it looks awesome on my resume. From there, I went to work at Lawrence Livermore National Lab, and this, again, was an incredible place to work. I felt like this was the best job in the world. But it was 43.7 miles away from home, and even though it was in between some beautiful wineries and vineyards, it was 43.7 miles away. And a friend of mine who had started his career with me at Xerox had just landed a job with Motorola as employee number 2 of this new research team that Motorola was creating. And they were looking for employee number 3 to be the director of this new program. And he invited me to come in and apply. And I did, and I joined Motorola. And this was the 4th time I felt like I had the best job in the world. We had direct contact with the CEO because this was his pet project. He had this vision of a connected home. This was almost 20 years ago, where he said, he would meet with us almost on a monthly basis. Unannounced, he would call our secretary and say, I'm pulling into the driveway, into the parking lot. I want an update, right? And so unannounced, we had to run around and set something up just to give him an update. But his vision was, I have this so-called smartphone, but when I walk into my house, none of those devices know that I'm there. And why is it that I'm only recording a program in my living room and then I can't see it in my bedroom, right? And so we developed all these technologies, and this was, I have missions that are going to projects, spaceflight projects that are going to Mars. One that's 40 million kilometers away from us today. But this has been my most stressful job, even today, because this is the organization that I had around the world, 12 different places in St. Petersburg, Russia. I had 200 engineers. But this was by far my most stressful job. And finally, in 2007, I joined NASA, and I was hired to manage a team of software developers and systems engineers supporting the Constellation program. That was our previous attempt at redesigning everything to go back to the moon and to go to Mars. And when that project was canceled, but everything, the data systems that we were working on were all for ground systems. And when that project was canceled, I asked, are there any opportunities for me to work on a spaceflight project? Because, working at NASA, you want to work on something that's going to space. And they said, yeah, but you don't know much about space. And I said, okay. So you're my boss. So how can I make that happen? And he said, well, we have this program with the Stevens Institute of Technology, a space program management graduate. And it's every 2 years. It's a 2-year program. We accept 10 NASA employees, apply, and if you get in, by the time you're done, you will probably qualify for an assignment like that. So I applied. 18 months after I applied and got in, I started getting responsibilities to manage spaceflight missions. And one of them was, I was assigned to be the deputy manager for the entry, descent, and landing technology development. And that was quite an experience. I was also given, soon after that, given responsibility for all the smallsat missions at Ames, as well as I was asked to be the chief engineer on this animal enclosure module that we took up on a space shuttle. And then from then on, I was introduced to MIT, and Alvaro already shared with you guys about the spheres. And finally, where I was the project manager of this educational project with the San Jose State University. And then, the second question I get asked is, when did you first dream of working at NASA? And I throw the question back at the audience. When do you think Andres first dreamed of working at NASA, right? And I know we're running out of time, so the answer is never. I never thought it was remotely possible, right, for me to work at NASA for a number of reasons. I thought everyone was a rocket scientist, right? And I thought, I'm just an electrical engineer. I don't know anything about space. I don't know anything about, I'm not a rocket scientist. So I never did. About a month after I started at Motorola, I was called by Lockheed Martin, and I was asked to apply for the position that I eventually filled. But when they called, it was too early. I had just started at Motorola, and I told them that. I said, I just started this position with Motorola. I'm actually recruiting my friends to come and join me. It would be really bad if I left, and unethical too. And they asked, well, can we call you in a year or 2 years? And I thought, they're never gonna call. I'll just say yes. But they called. And that's how I started at NASA. So my journey to NASA was unplanned. This is what it's been. Xerox, Park, my startup, Lawrence Livermore, Motorola, and now NASA. And I accept invitations like today to come here because I truly believe that we need to do our part in inspiring you guys to come and help us, right? To come and join us. And whether it's directly working for NASA or indirectly, right? We do quite a bit with industry, right? We involve lots and lots of folks to come and join us. But in the spirit of Hispanic Heritage Month, I also want to share with you guys that I'm the chair of the Hispanic group at Ames, and this is our mission. Our mission is to promote the development, inclusion, and innovation of our workforce with a focus on celebrating and fostering Hispanic heritage and culture. So we do quite a bit to assist NASA to reach out to the community, and this is me when I was first inspired to and motivated to pay it forward, to start reaching out to the community. While I was at Cal Poly, I saw this movie. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it, about an incredible calculus professor in East Los Angeles. And I saw that movie, and then I started teaching these little ones pre-algebra at the elementary school where I was a teacher's assistant. And ever since then, I love inviting the little ones to come and hear what we do. Whenever I can make it in person, I come through video conferencing. That's my little sister. She was the principal of that school, and she invited me to come and talk to this class during Career Day. In California, for a number of years, we organized this event with the community, and you can see some of the numbers. I've been in Silicon Valley for 34 years. I know a lot of people now. I invite folks, and they come in and help me with activities like this. In this particular case, I had over 100 Silicon Valley volunteers come in and help me with an event in a community that doesn't get folks like us to come in and visit. And this is what it looked like. Also with universities, and here you can see a photo of my good friend Alvar. One, he's in our Mission Control Center. We were conducting operations with spheres. The one in the middle, we were in his lab at MIT. And then he invited me to fly with them on the zero-G plane. So thank you. Because I was the program exec for Spheres, he also gave me the opportunity to say a few words during the finals. And I haven't told you this, Alvar, but look at the audience. They were all the other NASA folks, they were all astronauts, and I was the only one that was not an astronaut. So I tell my family that I was shaking on my boots when I was in front of this crowd. We also do outreach with Latin America. About 7 years ago, I authored a Space Act agreement with the Mexican Space Agency, and we conducted this project successfully. University students built a CubeSat. NASA took it to station, and we deployed it from there, and then the university operated the mission from Puebla. So I get invited quite a bit. I enjoy it. Colombia, Japan, Spain. I've been invited. I had never been to Spain, and I've been invited 5 times now to do the keynote for this event. Peru was incredible. And I always like to share, a few key messages that I still think about, not every day, but constantly. And we're all faced with a series of great opportunities, brilliantly disguised as impossible situations. When I look at these logos here, that little boy that immigrated had no idea that he was going to end up at these places. And then also, I like to share with everyone that luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity, right? We tend to say, I just had bad luck. Maybe you weren't as prepared as you should have been, right? You guys are going to see some opportunities that are going to be incredible, right? I saw these here, and they were amazing. But you guys just wait until what's in store for you guys. We tell everyone, we from NASA tell everyone that you guys are the Artemis generation. You guys are going to have lots of opportunities to go to space. You're going to see folks like yourself, or maybe yourself, you're going to go to space. That's if you want, right? So I ask some people, and some people don't want to go to space. But you're going to have that opportunity. And I also like to leave you with what I've learned so far, right? Over 34 years in Silicon Valley, I've worked in the private sector, in the public sector, in 2 Fortune 100 companies, 2 federal agencies. I've been a co-founder of an internet company. This is what I learned so far. When I lost focus, I had no idea how many options education gives you. And also, when I graduated from Cal Poly, I thought I was done. Every place I've been has sent me back to school, right? And so education doesn't end. You have to be also proactive about setting your goals and objectives and follow through, finish what you started, right? Also, life is too short, so have fun, right? I think back these past 34 years, when I moved to Silicon Valley, I was 27. I'm 61 now. And so it feels like yesterday. So have fun. Create your own opportunities. There's been like 5 different instances where I saw a need and I asked if I could help. And that turned into my new position, okay? Learn both from failures and success. Take risk and teamwork. If you think you're gonna have an opportunity to work by yourself more than once or several, think about working as a team. Everything we do as a team. And then also, I tell folks that there's a popular phrase, everything I learn in kinder. Well, I say I didn't go to kinder. So to me is, everything I learned at Xerox, because Xerox demanded the highest quality possible, right? And it just takes a little more effort. So be impeccable, have impeccable work ethic, because you'll know and you'll see that's gonna create, people are gonna know you because of that, right? You're gonna have a good reputation. I've received calls about, hey, do you know someone who can do this? And I'll say, well, what about this person? Oh, no, he said he was gonna finish something and so I always build a good reputation by demonstrating that you have an impeccable work ethic. Because at the end of the day, everything you do represents you, right? It's that simple, right? So, produce the highest quality you can possibly deliver. And be proactive and also drive your career. When you graduate, right, make sure that you're behind the steering wheel of your career. Don't allow yourself to be in a position where they're telling you what your next position is going to be. Create that opportunity. So this is me. I on purpose don't carry business cards because I want you to find me on LinkedIn. If you're a student, a professor, or a professional in this field, I accept your connection request. And we publish everything we do. We have an incredible social media. So thank you.
Andres, thank you so much. I know some of you have time commitments, time limits, so if anybody needs to leave, please feel absolutely free. Kim is preparing the free food in the back. I did not break that promise. And right outside the room, we have set up a few posters and patches and things that Andres brought from NASA.
I brought you some
and you're
goodies.
very welcome to grab as you leave for several of those options. We're happy to take some questions, I think. Again, I don't want to force anybody to have to sit through it. If you want to listen to the questions while you get food, all I ask is don't make tons of noise as you get food, and Andres answer some questions while you guys stand up and relax too a little bit. So if anyone has questions, yeah, I'll bring this for you. Just so you speak loudly though, because he doesn't go.
Thank you for coming.
You mentioned that a high portion of the alerts that the space station gets are actually false alarms, and that your new computer system will hopefully be able to respond within seconds to alerts. How will you, do you have any plans on how to determine what is a false alarm that quickly? And are you going to be feeding in the data from all the false alarms and why we know they were false alarms to get there?
So we're just getting started, but that is within the scope of making. So the great thing about all the lessons learned from station is that they're there, right? And station's still there, right? So yeah, we're gonna capitalize on everything that we've learned so far. Yeah, thank you, good question.
Okay, before everyone, sorry. Well, thank you very much. Gracias, Andrés. Es un placer. Como representante de...
Hable enfrente del
Okay, yeah, I'll speak to the microphone. I just want to, I'm honored as the Consul of Mexico here in Seattle to have a Mexican national here with us, with that perspective that he has of life, and with all his life achievements. It's really, truly an honor for us here that we represent the migrants, the people that come from Mexico and look for an achievement to be inserted in this foreign country and succeed. So his approach to life is just a model to be followed. I truly enjoy your presentation, and I see many Hispanics here. So the dreams of success are not that far, and you have a living proof here. So I'm honored to be here, and I just hope you have enjoyed it, and look forward to cases such as the one as Andres in your own life. So thank you very much.
Thank
Gracias,
you.
Andrés.
No, gracias a ti. Gracias por venir.
Yeah, I apologize myself because I didn't mention that the other special guests that were arriving are the consul from Mexico in Seattle and the liaison for political and economic affairs. I think I got that right. So thank you very much for being here with us too. And I think we have one more question here while food's still being grabbed.
Hello. So I have a. Is this working?
You have to speak loudly. That's only for the online video.
Okay. So I have a question about the crewed mission from Moon to Mars. So do you see the artificial gravity system for the astronauts on board as something necessary, or do you see that as something that they can get away with without?
Yeah, great question. And so right now we're in the process of so the Mars, we call it the Mars Transit Hub right now, but it's really our spaceship. And my lead systems engineer is also the lead engineer for Mars Transit Hub. So those are some of the things that they're looking at, right? So the Mars right now, almost the entire focus is on getting back to the moon, right? And so, but we are starting to look at different concepts, like the one I share with you of what a mission could look like. But to that level of detail, we haven't really started to look into. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess my question was a kind of follow-up to that. I was wondering how far along is the development of something like that's pictured there?
Yeah.
Because I'm doing some work on like a nuclear engine, and I was wondering if that's applicable or if they've decided on like technology like
thanks,
that.
yes. And maybe I didn't mention, but this is a concept, but it's a valid concept, right? Because yes, we're looking at two different types of propulsion, and they're both nuclear. And we're working closely with DARPA and Draco. I don't know if you've, yeah.
My question was like a follow-up to the question before this. Will the moon mission be taking everything that the astronauts will need and use on the moon as like a package? It's in similar fashion to those who go to the Mars will be carrying all their food and equipment with them to Mars?
Yeah, so we know there's a lot of water there, right? And so at a minimum, there's water that we can use. But food is something that we're going to be taking, right? Long term, we'll probably find a way to also grow our own plants and other things. The great thing about going back to the moon is that we're doing this not only with our partners, and you saw all the flags, but also with industry. So industry is playing a major role in this. So as part of Artemis, we have the CLIPS program, and that's a commercial lunar payload system, where we have 14 different companies that are going to be delivering payloads to the moon. Some of those payloads are going to be for us. Some of those payloads are going to be for other companies that want to establish something on the moon, right? Maybe they want to mine the moon, right? Maybe they want to do, they have specific goals. So, but all of that is being sorted out, and I'm not that involved with that. But yeah, but we do have the CLIPS program, which is, this year they made their first 2 attempts to, for deliveries. It didn't go all that well, right? But we're just getting started. Yeah.
Hi, so I have a question about kind of your career path to your position right now. You change by just looking at it. You you went from like EE to CS to Livermore, and then now over to engineering again with aerospace. I'm wondering, like, when you made those changes, like, how did you feel? Like, did you feel confident in what you're doing, or like what made you decide to make those choices?
Yep. Yeah, great question. Because sometimes what I mention is that almost at every stop I started with very little knowledge about what that particular institution did, right? And Xerox gave me my first opportunity. They knew that I was the product of a decent university, actually really good university. So they saw the potential, and there was a lot of training during my first year, and then when I went to Lawrence Livermore, I was not involved with the nuclear. They have a nuclear reactor, and now when I was there, they were just building the NIF facility, which is the most powerful laser in the world. They were just starting construction of that building, but I was not involved. I was leading a software development team there. So it was somewhat related to what I had done in the past. But when I went to Motorola, this was for the television industry. Motorola used to have a monopoly on the cable set-top boxes, not just what we had in our homes, but also what the broadcasting companies had in their back rooms, in their offices. They had a monopoly on everything. So when I joined them, I didn't know much about TV technology, right? I didn't know how a tuner worked, right? And but the guy that invited me to come and apply, he had been not only with Xerox, but he had joined a company called Replay TV, and he is a co-inventor of the digital video recorder. So he gave me a real quick introduction into those technologies, and then so I was with him at Motorola, but he had come from Roku, and then after Motorola he went to Roku. So my point is, almost at every stop, I had to retool myself and learn a really steep learning curve. What a lot of companies are looking for is a potential, right? If you have what it takes to come up to speed really fast, right? And I don't say your impeccable work ethic for nothing. I was actually recommended for many of these positions as someone that would do what he signed up to do, right? Now sometimes things happen. You get sick, something happens, and what that means to me is, if you commit yourself to deliver, it's just like in school, you have to turn in your homework on time, right? But sometimes in real life, some things happen, right? But as long as you communicate that what you committed to delivering on a given date's probably not going to happen, right? And ask for additional time, that goes a long way, right? Nothing worse than you knowing you have to deliver something and you sit back and allow the deadline to come and go and you didn't say anything. That's a real fast way to deliver, to create a really bad reputation. So, yeah, so I was recommended for a number of these positions. and I also knew, in some cases, very little about that industry. So, but after a few months, I was pretty competent. Yeah. So.
Okay, so my question is about how you helped develop a lot of CubeSats, right? And I'm just wondering, what are some like critical factors in the success and failures of the CubeSats that you've helped develop?
Yeah, I'm chuckling because I chair a panel at the IAC, the International Astronautics Conference, where all the agencies get together, and I chair a panel on disruptive technology. And on my panel, I had some very important people in the CubeSat industry. And I knew about the failure rate, right? I think it's 40%. But let me tell you why it's 40%, right? It's 40% because most of the CubeSat missions are unique. Well, maybe not now, but back then, because now we have companies producing by the hundreds or by the tens. But when we were getting started, we didn't have an industry where I could buy what I needed, right? We had to design the power system, the avionics, the array, even the solar panels, right? I had to buy the solar cells and design my solar panel. We had to design everything from scratch because there was not too many places where you could go and just say, I need this. I'm just gonna go to this company, or I'm gonna go to this other one to buy this. And so because you had to design everything from scratch, and in most cases, especially the university projects, there were students who were doing it for the very first time. Okay, and so yes, the failure rate, and we keep a database of all the missions, right? And there's different levels of success, right? Because when we start a project, a spaceflight project, right away we document the mission success criteria, right? And there's different levels, right? And we allow the teams to take credit for building it, certifying it, and delivering it on time. Okay? You can check off criteria of success because you delivered it, right? Because beyond that, many things can happen, right? What if it's a new rocket and something happens to the rocket, right? That wasn't your fault, right? What if maybe it's not a new rocket, but the dispenser didn't quite open where it said it was going to open, or something happened that was not your, right? So there's a number of different things that could happen. But what we did see back then, this was like 10 years ago. I haven't checked the data since then. We did notice that there was like a 40% failure ratio. And it was predominantly because it was students who were doing it for the first time. But I'm happy, right, that they had that experience. So we need to give you the opportunity to try. That's the only way you're going to learn, right? So.
I want to just finish with that quote. So remember what it said. You have the opportunity to triumph, and we really try here. Christy, thank you so much for helping have Andres here. Christy is a department chair for Aeroastro, so thank you very much for that. And I think you agree with that last quote. That's what we wanted to do. I'm gonna defend Andres from himself. He will stay here until after his plane leaves. But they're picking him up in about 10 minutes. So to make sure that we can get to the car and that he can get to the airport, we're going to break here with questions. Feel free to grab more food. Feel free to mingle a little bit. If you want to surround the lectern for a little bit, go for it. Thank you very much for coming. Really appreciate you being here.